Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The oatmeal was still warm when she told me she was going on a date. Not with me. She didn't look nervous. She didn't fidget or stammer. She simply wiped her hands on the towel, glanced at the clock, and said, "I'll be out tonight. Just lock the door when you leave." That was it. 12 years of marriage condensed into a single, hollow instruction. Lock the door when you leave. I stood there with a spoon in my hand and something boiling inside me that didn't feel like anger. Not yet. Confusion, maybe. Or shame. The kind of shame that creeps in when you realize you've been the only one playing by the rules. I asked quietly, "Are you serious?" She didn't answer. She just shrugged, picked up her phone, and walked out of the kitchen like we were roommates. Like we hadn't shared every holiday, every broken appliance, every dumb inside joke that no one else would understand. And that's when I started noticing things. Tiny details I'd missed. Her phone always face down. New perfume that didn't smell like her. Laughter at messages I never saw. And that moment last week when I asked if she wanted to plan something for our anniversary, and she blinked like I'd mentioned a holiday she'd never heard of. It hit me all at once. This wasn't new. She had already left me. Emotionally. She was just now brave enough, or cruel enough, to say it out loud. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I nodded like some sad sitcom character, and went to work like it was any other Tuesday. That night, she came home at 1:16 a.m. No apology, no explanation. She didn't even look at me. She walked past me in her heels I hadn't seen in years, and whispered, "I'll make it up to you later." That's when something in me finally snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, bitter resolve. She had no idea that I wasn't going to wait around for the apology. She had no idea what I'd found in her car. And she definitely had no idea that the next time she walked through that door, everything would be different. She didn't know I had the spare key to her car. It had been taped under the kitchen drawer since we bought the damn thing, and I don't think she remembered. Or maybe she thought I'd never bother looking. But the night she came home wearing lipstick that wasn't hers, because I swear I saw her wipe it off and apply a different shade before stepping out of the car, I knew I had to look, not for revenge, for answers. Because when you've spent 12 years loving someone and they start treating you like you're a stranger renting space in their life, you don't just move on. You search for the missing pieces. She was asleep when I crept out in my socks. It was 2:04 a.m. Cold, foggy, silent, except for the ticking in my head that had replaced actual thoughts. I slid into the front seat of her SUV, still warm from her drive home, and I opened the glove box. I was expecting, I don't know, receipts maybe, a forgotten perfume bottle, something ordinary. But what I found was an envelope, unsealed. My name wasn't on it. Inside were printed directions to a hotel in the next town over, 25 miles west, along with a crumpled receipt for room service, 2 entrees, 1 bottle of champagne, and a note scrawled on the back in a handwriting I didn't recognize. Next Thursday. Same time. Can't stop thinking about you. I stared at it until my vision blurred. I wasn't sure if I was about to pass out or explode. She had a system, a pattern. This wasn't a one-time date she needed to feel something again. This was a relationship. She had backup perfume in her trunk, a separate playlist on Spotify under a fake name. And when I checked the Bluetooth history on her car's dashboard, there was another phone listed, Evan's iPhone, the same name I saw pop up in her backup cloud the night I checked her old phone. I sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't pound the steering wheel like some betrayed husband in a movie. I just sat in that car with my hands in my lap and the envelope between my knees, feeling like I died quietly 2 weeks ago, and nobody had told me. At 3:12 a.m., I walked back inside. I crawled into bed beside her. She shifted in her sleep and instinctively curled toward me, resting her hand on my chest like she used to when we were still us. For a second, I wanted to believe it was real again. But all I felt was cold. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, wide-eyed, mapping out the one thing I never thought I'd plan in my life. My exit. Not loud, not violent, just final. Because she wanted a night to feel something. And now, so did I. The strangest part of betrayal isn't the moment you find out. It's what comes after. The hours, the days, where you're still expected to function like your whole world didn't just shift sideways. You still have to take out the trash, still have to answer emails at work, still have to nod when your wife casually asks if there's milk left in the fridge, knowing full well she drank wine in a hotel bed with someone else just 48 hours earlier. That weekend, I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I acted like I didn't see the text that lit up her phone screen during dinner, like I didn't hear her giggle while she typed under the table. I let her believe I was still asleep Sunday morning when she left to run errands with foundation hastily smeared over a hickey. What she didn't know, what she'll probably never know, is that every minute we spent together that weekend was me saying goodbye. Not emotionally. That had already happened in the car. No, this was logistical. I started by making a list. I know how pathetic that sounds, but it helped. I needed order. I needed steps. So I wrote it down. Step 1, check bank statements. Step 2, copy important files. Step 3, open new personal account. Step 4, withdraw my half in cash. Step 5, move essentials to storage. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was survival. The worst part? She didn't notice. Not once. When I stopped texting her from work, she didn't ask why. When I started sleeping on the edge of the bed instead of curled up behind her, like I had every winter for over a decade, she didn't shift closer. When I sat across from her at breakfast and stared just a little too long, she didn't look up. She was already gone. I think I knew that. I just didn't want to admit it until I had proof. That proof came Monday morning. She was in the shower. Her phone was left face up for once. Maybe she thought I wouldn't check again. Maybe she didn't care. But this time, it wasn't a text that broke me. It was a photo, a mirror selfie of the two of them, her in that same black dress. Him, shirtless, standing behind her, arms around her waist like she belonged there. Caption: last Thursday was perfect. Can't wait for next time. Beautiful next time. That meant there was a plan. That meant I had a deadline. I stared at that photo for a full minute, maybe 2. My hands didn't even shake. I didn't feel panic or rage. I just felt done. When she came out wrapped in a towel, humming, asking if I wanted her to pick up takeout after work, I looked her right in the eyes and said, "Now, I've got plans." It was the first time I lied to her, and it felt like the most honest thing I'd done in years. On Tuesday morning, I woke up earlier than usual, got dressed without waking her, and walked out without saying a word. No goodbye, no note. I just left. That had never happened in 12 years, not once. And still, she didn't call. Not during the day, not even to ask if I wanted dinner. I guess when someone already has a backup, they stop worrying if the original is fading out of the picture. At work, I stared at my screen all morning and barely typed a thing. The IT guy walked by twice and joked about me being frozen, and I just nodded. What he didn't know was that I was moving faster than I ever had, just not in a way anyone could see. I requested a few vacation days and told my boss I needed time to handle some family stuff. He looked at me with quiet concern. Maybe he saw it in my face. The fatigue, the weight of a decision I hadn't fully said out loud yet. He didn't ask questions. At lunch, I walked 3 blocks down to a small credit union I hadn't been to in years. I opened a personal account. Separate. Clean. I deposited the first chunk of my paycheck and told them I'd be making cash deposits from that point forward. I gave them a new mailing address, one that didn't point to our house, just a P.O. box in town, for now. I spent the rest of the day printing documents at the library, my resume, old tax returns, copies of our marriage certificate, and the deed to the house. I scanned everything and saved it all to a flash drive labeled backup keys. It was small, silver, and I hid it inside a roll of socks in the garage. She never touched the garage. By the time I got home, it was 6:40 p.m. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Of course it wasn't. She walked in 2 hours later, breathless and smiling like she was auditioning for a rom-com. She had a paper bag of Chinese food and acted like it was 2013 again. "I didn't know what you'd be in the mood for, so I just grabbed your usual," she said. I looked at her for a second too long. She looked back like I was supposed to be impressed she remembered I'd liked sesame chicken. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm great," I said, and I was. For the first time in months, maybe longer, I felt like I was in control of something. We sat down to eat. I didn't touch a bite. She didn't notice. She was too busy texting. That night, I lay in bed beside her, listening to the faint buzz of her phone on silent. I watched the screen light up twice, both times with a name that had now become familiar. Evan. New. I didn't check the messages. I didn't need to. I already knew the storyline. She thought she had options. She thought I was the soft, spineless husband who'd keep quiet while she played pretend with some faceless man who thought he won her. What she didn't know was that I had already spoken to a real estate agent earlier that afternoon. Our house, the one we bought together in year 2 of our marriage, was now being quietly evaluated. She wouldn't see a "for sale" sign in the yard. Not yet. But soon, the floor beneath her would start shifting. And when it did, there would be no warning, no fight. Just absence. It was raining the night I finally decided to test my exit plan. Not symbolic rain, just real, hard, irritating rain that made the streetlights flicker and the whole house smell like wet concrete. She was running late. Again. I watched the clock flip past 9 p.m. and then 9:30. When her headlights finally hit the driveway, I already had my shoes on and my jacket folded neatly by the door. I didn't greet her. She didn't apologize. Instead, she walked in, soaking wet, mascara smudged in a way that didn't come from emotion. "You won't believe the traffic," she said, not even looking at me. She peeled off her coat and kicked off her shoes like she had nothing to hide. Like she hadn't just spent 3 hours making new memories with someone who wasn't her husband. I nodded and handed her a towel. She smiled, said, "Thanks, babe," like the past few weeks hadn't hollowed me out. That was the last time she ever called me that. 15 minutes later, the power went out. No storm warning, no thunderclap. Just a loud click, and the house went dark. She froze in the hallway, half dressed for bed. "Did you forget to pay the bill again?" she snapped. That stung. I hadn't forgotten to pay the bill. I deliberately scheduled it for cancellation. One of many little things she hadn't noticed. No internet, no power, no warning. I lit a candle in the kitchen. She rolled her eyes and said, "What is this, the 1800s?" I didn't answer. I just lit another one and placed it in the living room. Then I handed her her phone from the counter. "No Wi-Fi," she muttered, tapping at the screen. "God, this is annoying." I was in the middle of a conversation. "I know," I said. "With Evan." She looked up sharply. Her face twitched in a way that told me everything. But she didn't deny it. Not anymore. Instead, she set the phone down slowly and asked, "How long have you known?" I didn't blink. "Long enough?" She crossed her arms like she was bracing for an argument. Like she expected a speech, a breakdown, a man begging to understand why. But I wasn't going to give her that. Instead, I asked her the one question I'd been holding back for weeks. Was it worth it? She looked confused, like she didn't understand the rules of the game anymore, like I'd taken away the script. "I don't know," she finally whispered. That was the most honest thing she'd said in months. She slept on the couch that night, curled up under the throw blanket we got from her sister's wedding. I watched her for a few minutes before I turned and walked into the bedroom alone. The silence in the house was louder than any fight we could have had. At 4:30 a.m., while she was still asleep, I went into the garage and opened the storage locker I'd been quietly filling for 3 weeks. 2 suitcases, 1 folder, 1 flash drive, 1 envelope containing all the cash I'd withdrawn piece by piece, unnoticed. I set my phone on the workbench. I left it unlocked. Inside the Notes app was 1 message. "Don't call, don't text, don't look for me. You wanted space. Now you have all of it." Then I walked out the back door, got into the car she'd forgotten I even owned, and drove toward the city. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. Like someone leaving a house that was never really his anymore. 3 hours after I left, I turned off my phone for good. I didn't want to hear from her. Not apologies, not outrage, not a pathetic attempt to spin it into some "we were drifting apart" narrative that let her off the hook. I knew her well enough to predict every excuse she'd try before she even spoke. But what I didn't anticipate was how quickly she'd panic once she realized I hadn't just stormed off. I'd vanished. By 11 a.m., she started calling my job. I know this because my boss called me from his personal number to say, "Your wife's been calling all morning. She says you didn't come home. Everything okay?" I told him I'd explain later. He didn't press. He just sighed and said, "Take whatever time you need." I think he knew, or at least guessed enough to stay out of it. By noon, she called my sister, then my mom. She even messaged my cousin, who I hadn't seen since Christmas of 2018. I watched it all unfold through a burner phone I'd set up just for monitoring. No replies, just her messages piling up, desperate and contradicting themselves. One said she was worried I'd been in an accident. Another said, "I know you're trying to punish me." Another, hours later, just said, "Please, talk to me." It was like watching someone slowly drown in a pool they themselves jumped into. Meanwhile, I was in a small furnished rental on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, just a clean room with a mattress, a desk, and a window that overlooked a quiet alley. I didn't need comfort. I needed silence, space. I needed to breathe without hearing her voice in the next room, laughing at a text from a man who thought I didn't exist. I started documenting everything, not for revenge, for clarity. I wrote down every date, every name I'd seen pop up, every receipt, every time she'd come home late. I wasn't planning to expose her publicly, but I wasn't going to let her rewrite history when people started asking questions, because they would ask. Friends, coworkers, her family. And when she inevitably tried to tell them some sugar-coated version of, "We just grew apart," I'd be ready to hand them the truth in one clean, undeniable folder. By the end of the second day, she changed tactics. Her messages got softer. "I made mistakes," she wrote, "but I didn't think you'd just leave. Please come home. We can fix this." No, we couldn't. Because what she still didn't understand was that I had begged for connection for years. I had brought up the distance, the silence, the lack of intimacy, not just physical, but emotional. I'd asked her over and over again to meet me halfway. She had 12 years to fix things. She waited until I was gone to pretend to care. And then, on the third day, something new happened. She posted a photo of us on social media. A throwback from our vacation in Maine 5 years ago. The caption just said, "Come home." She was trying to write a new version of the story, one where she looked like the abandoned wife, the victim. What she didn't know was that I had already filed for separation, quietly, through a lawyer who owed me a favor and didn't mind backdating the consultation. The house was already being prepared for listing. The bank accounts were already split. She was still talking to the version of me that had existed 6 months ago, the guy who would have forgiven her for anything just to keep the peace. But that version of me, he didn't live here anymore. By the 5th day of radio silence, she stopped trying to play the victim. The posts came down. The sweet texts turned into guilt-tripping rants. "You're abandoning our marriage," she wrote. "You're not even giving me a chance to make this right." That word, chance, almost made me laugh. I wanted to reply and list every single chance I'd given her while she was out perfecting her double life. But I didn't. I didn't reply at all. Instead, I mailed her something. It was a simple package. Nothing aggressive, nothing cruel. Just a brown cardboard box with no return address. Inside was a small hardcover photo album I'd made. The first few pages were filled with pictures of our best years, holidays, goofy moments, road trips, our old dog Roscoe. Every photo carefully chosen to remind her of what she used to have. But halfway through the book, the tone changed. The images disappeared. In their place were printed screenshots, text threads, call logs, a scanned hotel receipt. A copy of the message she sent Evan while I was home making her favorite soup. Her, "I'll make it up to you later," moment captured forever. The final pages included 2 things, a copy of the separation notice and a handwritten note that simply read, "You said you wanted to feel something again. How does this feel?" I knew when the package was delivered because I paid extra to have it dropped off with a signature required. Her name was on the receipt. For the next 24 hours, I heard nothing. No texts, no calls, no posts. Silence, like a bomb had gone off, and all that remained was smoke. But on day 6, I got the first voicemail. Her voice was different now, fragile, uneven. She didn't ask me to come home. She didn't beg. She just asked if there was anything left. Not love, not forgiveness, just anything. And for a second, I almost felt something crack inside me. But then I remembered the version of me who would have answered that question had already been erased by her choices. That night, I drove past the house. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. But I saw her through the window, sitting at the kitchen table with the box open in front of her, staring at the photos like they were evidence from a crime scene. Maybe they were. Maybe she finally realized this wasn't just a phase or a punishment. This was the consequence. The next morning, I met with the realtor. She handed me a revised agreement, my name only. Her signature line was blank. I asked what would happen if she refused to sign, and the realtor shrugged. "Then it gets messy," she said, "but you've already taken most of the clean steps." I walked out of the office and stood on the sidewalk for a long time, just watching people pass by, strangers in motion, completely unaware of the invisible war I'd been fighting for weeks. And that's when I realized something. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want closure. I didn't even need her to hurt. I just wanted to disappear so completely from her story that she could never explain what happened without choking on her own edits. 3 weeks had passed since I mailed her the box. I hadn't checked the old phone line. I hadn't scrolled through her socials. I hadn't once tried to see how she was doing. It was like turning the volume down on a movie I no longer cared to watch. Somewhere in that time, she moved back to her sister's place. The house stayed empty. Quiet. No more red heels at the door. No more perfume soaked into the pillows. No more lies. I returned once. Just once. The real estate agent left the key for me in a small black lockbox on the back fence. The moment I stepped inside, it was like entering a museum. Everything looked exactly the same, but felt like it had been frozen in time. Like I could still hear echoes of conversations that ended too early, smiles that died out months before the truth surfaced. I walked through each room with purpose. No nostalgia, no hesitation. I didn't take much, just a leather-bound notebook from the office drawer, a photograph of my dad that she never even noticed, and the ring I'd taken off before I left. It was still sitting on the bathroom sink, untouched. That felt symbolic. I left it there. On the final day of the closing, she texted me for the first time in over a week, not to argue, not to guilt. Just one line, "You disappeared like I never existed." I didn't reply, because sometimes the best closure is knowing someone will never get to rewrite the ending. Instead, I focused on the new place. It was a small apartment downtown with creaky floors, a busted dishwasher, and a view of the bus stop. But it was mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was tiptoeing through my own life. I joined a gym. I started drawing again. I had coffee with a neighbor named June, who told me my plants were dying wrong and laughed so hard she snorted. It was slow, it was real, and it was enough. So many people think that the end of a relationship means the end of the story. But sometimes it's just the prologue finally closing. The real chapters, the ones where you get to write yourself without compromise, those come after. So, yeah, she went on a date to feel something again. But I was the one who actually got to start over. If you've been with us through this entire journey, thank you. Make sure to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more stories just like this. Raw, real, and unforgettable. And here's your question of the day. What's one historical event, big or small, that changed your perspective on life forever? Drop it in the comments below. We read everything. This has been Reddit Confessions. Until next time, take care of your peace. It's worth more than closure.